Well, hello YouTubers, and welcome back to the Holtzmichel channel and this new episode of Zerks&Wheels. Today we're going to be talking about picking your nose, and I'm not talking this nose, I'm talking about this nose. Now the other day I got to making these parts here for the end matcher, the Marinus end matcher, and I ran into a conundrum where I needed a 5.5 millimeter drill bit for an M5 screw, and unfortunately I didn't have a brad point bit in that size, and I really didn't feel like sending one off to have it ground and yada yada yada. You guys know the drill. So what I did is I took a regular spiral drill that I have right here. We all know these, you can pick them up just about anywhere, they're ubiquitous. But the problem is with these are these are made for steel. And when you look at the point, especially in the smaller drills, there's not much of a cutting edge at the very tip. And now in steel it works a little different than it does in wood, in that it acts like a chisel and actually scrapes off a chip, whereas in the wood it just balls the fibers up and pushes them aside. It doesn't cut, so that's why you have, like on a brad point bit, that pointy tip in the middle. It still only, it doesn't cut those fibers either. It just twirls them around, and it starts a center hole in order to keep the drill on track. Now in these spiral drills, your cutting edge, let me bring the camera around here a little closer, and we'll go through the anatomy of a drill, and then we'll take a look at various other drills for wood, steel, etc., other, plastic and stuff, because there are special drills for plastics. So let me bring the camera around, or come over to the workbench, and we'll go through that. So in these steel drills, like I say, we've got our flutes, our tip, and our cutting edge. Let me grab the other one here, the big one, this Morse taper, so you guys can get a better idea. So here's your cutting edge, and then right here at the tip is that chisel tip. Now in these small drills, this doesn't cut. It doesn't cut wood. It will scrape a chip off in steel because it acts like a chisel. And if you look at this, you got essentially cutting edge almost all the way across, except for a very, very small part in the middle, and that's where this tip comes in. And then also you have these flutes here, and these have a pretty sharp edge on them. Some of you guys probably made your acquaintance with them already, where you've gotten cut on them. So these, like I say, these don't work really that well in wood. They will work in a pinch. Like I said, I had to have a 5.5 millimeter hole for the M5 screw, and I'll show you guys that part here in a little bit. But you have your, of course, then your flutes, and the webbing is what this is called. And then of course your shank. Now this is a Morse taper shank. You just pop your drill chuck out and pop this in place in a drill press or in the lathe in the tailstock. So this uses friction right here to fix this in the spindle, and this little tang back here usually it can double as a driver, so to speak, if this were to slip in the Morse taper. So let's familiarize ourselves with some of the various types of drills that we have at our disposal. Again, we've already made the acquaintance with the ubiquitous spiral drill. Now, for working in wood and drilling wood, the optimum drill is actually one of these, and these are called a brad point. When you look real close, you got a little point here in the middle. This is actually a little bit farther ahead than the tip of your cutting edge right here. Now these inverted cutting edges help keep the chips evacuated. These drills are designed to be run at higher speeds. Your flutes do some of the cutting action in the hole. They smooth the edges of the hole and help separate some of the fibers. But these actually separate the fiber in the hole and then evacuate the chips that accumulate right here at the center. That's always a problem with these. With this type of drill, you know, you're going to have, you're going to have an accumulation of chips right here in the middle. And in order to get that out of there, these type of cutting edges don't do, they're cutting all the way across. So you're picking up a chip all the way across, and then you get a concentration of chips here in the middle, especially in wood, and then it bunches up and it causes the drill to push one way or the other in the hole away from the center and then drift. And I've had that problem in these parts. You can see right here where I chamfered the hole. Let's see here. And as I drilled into it, it's a little off center. So you can see over here on this side, this is where the drill came out. And when I chamfered it, of course, it was off center. Same thing over here. And that was due to the chips accumulating. Now, the question is, how do I know when my drill is drifting or running off? And that's a real easy question. You're going to get a lot of resistance on the quill feed, and then as you retract the drill from the hole, your flutes are going to be plugged. Sometimes they'll even be scorched, or the chips will be burnished in the flutes. So they'll be compacted in there and they won't clear out on their own, and then they'll burnish. Now that is usually due to one of several things actually. One is too low of a cutting speed. Two is a real sticky wood with high moisture content. And then two, a really soft wood. And three, I mean a really soft wood. So moving on here, then we have carbide bits. Now these guys, let's see if I can get that to focus real good. These guys have 3 flutes. These are a solid carbide bit, and as you can see, the flutes are real short on this because these guys, when they flex, they break right off. They don't take any kind of bending action at all. Then you have the good old HSS, just regular old, this is a wood drill bit. You can tell the flutes are a little more recessed. The edges of the flutes are sharper. And then, of course, you got a little bit darker color. This has been hardened a little different. So this is one of those HSS wood drill bits. And then sometimes you'll have a different pitch on the tip as well, kind of like with this one. Now this is also an HSS cobalt. This is a cobalt bit. This one is for steel. You can tell because the flutes, the spirals are there's a lot tighter twist. Oops, get back in frame, dummy. There's a lot tighter twist on the flutes. Now, softer materials, you're going to end up with quite, oops. As you can see, the flutes aren't near as steep in this wood bit as they are on this steel bit. Now, as I mentioned, there's also bits for plastic, and as you can see, the flutes on this guy are really almost straight up and down. Now, some of the older drill bits that are out there on the market, we have this guy here. This is for a brace bit. This is for making bigger holes, kind of like a hole saw. Hole saws are a different dynamic. I didn't really want to include these in the video, but I'm going to just for argument's sake, because you have a really interesting dynamic with hole saws. One, you got the drill bit, so you're going to run this at really high speed in wood, and then you're going to reduce your speed for the saw. There's going to be RPM indications on your package usually. Let's see here. Here we go. What you can expect. So for some materials, for hardened stuff like steel, 75 RPM on the saw. And then with plastics, 100 RPM. And plastics usually kind of coincide with wood RPMs as well. So you can probably figure that this is a 57 millimeter or 2 1/4 inch hole saw, that this will need to run at the same RPM as in wood as it would in plastic. So now this guy here, again, back to this guy, the flutes in this guy are straight. So what this does, it cuts just right across this way on this cutting face. So you got 2 cutting edges here. If this were ground a little different, you could cut in both directions. But this is, like I said, for a brace bit, one of those big, hand crank thingies. You can tell by this pyramid-shaped end piece here. This goes into the chuck, and there's a little square hole in the inside of the chuck that engages this and actually allows you to transfer power, because you can't hold the bit solely with the jaws of the chuck. And then we'll get to that here in a second as well. Now, some of you guys are familiar with this type of a bit. This one's a little old and rusty. Dyno guy sent this over from the UK, picked it up at an auction. Still a usable bit, it just needs to be resharpened and cleaned up a little bit. But the reason I'm including this is because the cutting edges on this is a real unique cutting edge. Now these are used for timber framing, and in green timbers and softwood green timbers, so coniferous woods like spruce, pine, etc. That's what this is for. You could also use this if you wanted to in oak. Yeah, I can see it being used in oak. It would probably work as well. But this again is for green woods, and this is where you drill a hole in the timber for the peg. You don't want a smooth hole when you're driving a peg in a timber, and that's the reason for this funky looking cutting edge. You've got this one up here above it where it's actually shaving the inside of the hole, and then this one here where it's picking up a chip. And then this little auger feeds into it forces its way in between the wood fibers, and it keeps the drill on track. It keeps it from wandering. And again, oops, I'm trying to do this all in the viewfinder here, and it's kind of hard to, but anyway, it's got this square thingy here for engaging in the bottom end of the chuck as well. And these things come in all kinds of different sizes with different twists. Here we have a really dinky one. This little tip's got to be reground. But one of the things that I wanted to show you on these particular types, now these have a scoring edge here like the Forstner bits that I have do. Oops, get back in frame, dummy. There we go. As you look, you got this edge right here to pick up a chip, and then you got this guy here to score the edge of the hole as it goes in. This actually feeds the drill. It keeps it from advancing too fast into the hole and also too slow. As you're turning it, it advances the drill, pulls it into, because the little screw pulls the drill in through the material, and it also guides it and keeps it on track. Now this one had the end of it cut off. I'll probably have to put 3 flutes on this in order for the thing to engage properly, or I'll have to figure something out, or maybe have to manufacture one of these to stick on the end of this so this will work in a brace bit. And finally, but not least, we have our Forstner bit. Now these act similar to a hole saw, but then also to these brace bits, because you have a nice big cutting edge here and you have a scoring edge here. Now the scoring edge shouldn't really be all that proud compared to the cutting edge. It needs to protrude just slightly so that as the bit turns in the hole, it scores just enough to where the blade cutting will pick up a chip. Now you're also probably asking yourself, why didn't I use a end mill to drill the hole in the wood? And you know, that's a pretty good question. Well, end mills aren't really designed to be run in a chuck, and when you look at these guys, there's really not much contact area. Now as you look at this, you're only getting a real small contact area along the jaw of these. And so the pressure point that you have is so small that the chuck can't really grab the drill bit all that well. Let me see here. I've got a bit here that showed some scoring, I think. Yeah. So when the drill stalls in the chuck, you'll see this scoring on the neck of the drill, and that's due to the fact that the pressure was overcome by the jaws and the thing spun. God damn it, get in frame. Now these bigger chucks, when these close up all the way, you can see they got a little bit of they don't close all the way. So you only have a certain size of drill. They have a little bit more surface area on the inside of the jaw. Let me see if we can get that in there. You can kind of see it on this one a little bit. There's quite a bit of a larger surface area on that edge of the jaw than in that small chuck. And so a big chuck will work a little better for a end mill, but again, you don't want to put an end mill in there because it just won't. The tool pressure is going to be so high that it won't. The chuck can't hold the tool. So when you compare this collet to a drill chuck, you can see quite a bit more surface area making contact with the tool than in the drill chuck, and that's the reason you shouldn't use an end mill as a drill bit, or trying to run an end mill in a drill chuck for doing different work. You can do it in a pinch, but it's not recommended. Like I say, you'll probably end up running in the jaws on your drill chuck when you stall a bit in the work. So that's one of the reasons, if you are going to use an end mill, use a collet. Don't use the chuck. So now we're going to take and drill a few little test holes here to show you how the chips should look when you're drilling in wood with any kind of a drill bit, really. It doesn't matter if it's one of these twist drills. Now, as you can see, I used a twist drill here, but again, that's due to the complexity of the part. I have this little screw right here, this 5mm, this M5 screw, and it has to go into the hole and then seat and stick out. So that's the reason we're using this. So we have a tapered shoulder inside the inside the hole here. Now, one of the things I got to add to this is that these type of drill bits need to be spun extremely fast in any kind of wood. If your drill press doesn't do any, you should try that again. Your drill press should run, top speed of about 4,000 RPM, especially for the smaller bits. These larger bits, you're going to go slower. The larger the bit is, of course, the slower you're going to have to spin it. But the small bits should be spun between 2.5 and 4,000 RPM, depending on size. I spun this little guy here, the Zips, the little 5.5mm guy, to pre-drill this hole. Like I said, it plugged up. Now, as you check this out here, we have, this is all from the same plank, by the way. This is a piece of maple, and it had a little bit of a variation in the moisture content. And as you can see, the holes drifted quite a bit when you turn it over. we're, you know, nice and center on our square here, but then we're off center on this side. That means the drill definitely drifted in the hole. So let's take a look at what the chips ought to look like. So that last go around wasn't worth a tinker's dam. Let's do this again. Now, as you can see with the more rigid drill, we're back in the center where we need to be. It got fairly warm, but this drill is rigid enough. It found its way back into the center where it needed to be. It didn't follow the hole that the 5mm drill made. It made its own way through the workpiece here. Now, as you can see how the chips kind of evacuated, they're all curly looking, and they really flew out of there with gusto. And that's the way it should look when you're drilling with any kind of a twist drill, be it a brad point bit or one of these in any kind of wood. If you're getting stuff looking like this, let me see if I can pick that up and bring it up to the camera. If you're getting chips like this that plug your flutes, you're turning too slow, or the moisture content in your wood is too high, or both, or you got a really soft wood. Well, YouTubers, that's a wrap for picking your nose today in this episode of Zerks&Wheels. Hope you guys were able to kind of gauge the process of selecting the proper drill for the job. Like I said, with wood, these spiral drills work to an extent. You got to make sure they're extremely sharp or freshly sharpened or essentially brand new out of the box. The TIN coated drills, yeah, you know, they'll work too. A lot of Forstner bits now come with that titanium nitride coating, although the stuff coming out of China is just probably more paint than it is actual titanium nitride. The brad point bit is probably the best selection for drilling into wood for this kind of a project. And like I said, my dilemma was I didn't have the proper size, and I really didn't feel like sending in a brad point in, you know, a drill in to have it ground to a brad point in order to do this project. So I just grabbed one and went to town on it. Unfortunately, it kind of did bite me in the ass, so to speak, in some respects, where the drill drifted in the hole. The saving grace of it was I didn't have to go very deep in order to maintain accuracy, because I only needed, you know, 5/16 of an inch roughly through fair to get where I needed to be in terms of depth. And then on the top side here with this 8mm, you know, mock snicks. Now the other thing is too, when it comes to selecting a drill, you want to keep your selection of flutes as short as you can, and that is due to the stability of the drill and keeps it from drifting. Let me grab some specialty drills here. Now here we have a pilot drill. These things are extremely rigid, and they have a tendency they stay right on course. And then I have a stubby drill, and this is an extreme short flute. I use this for drilling into thin materials so that the torque on this webbing here doesn't get so great where it'll snap off. And then we have these aircraft type bits. You're going to see this one here in another video coming up. This is a 4.8 millimeter. I think this produces a 5 millimeter hole. This is an aircraft drill bit, extremely long. They come in all kinds of different diameters and sizes too as well. So, but in order to maintain the stability of the cut, you want to select the shortest possible drill. Now what I did, I went into eBay and picked up a bunch of old junk drills, and for the purpose of making a set of stubbies. And like I say, this is going to be something that I use to drill into pipes or sheet metal and other projects, or on slightly slanted surfaces where I don't have the luxury of using an end mill or a pilot drill in order to get a hole started, if time and so forth don't allow for it, or if it's just a kind of a quick job where accuracy isn't all that critical, then I'll use a stubby drill on that, and that seems to work pretty good. Otherwise, you'll have a long drill kind of skate off the top of your pipe and kind of want to drift and go all kinds of cattywampus and break and that kind of nonsense. So anyway, that's a wrap for today. If you have any additional information to put with this subject, by all means put it in the comment section below. It's always a good thing to hear from the subscribers and get input from various other folks. I don't know it all, but when we combine our heads and get it all put together, then we get a good database that we all can work off of. So with that, like I say, if you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions, critiques, put them in the doobly-doo down below. And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and all that good jazz. We're sneaking up on 1,000 subscribers. Who knows? Maybe we might make it this year. Wait and see. With this video, I'd also like to extend a special thanks to Dino Guy over in the UK, who sent this big old box of drills over. He picked those up on a auction that he went to and didn't know really what to do with them, so he sent them my way, and along with a few other block planes and stuff like that. So there is an episode of real hand tool rescue coming up, so stay tuned for that in the coming weeks. Hopefully I'll get it done before Christmas. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it in the Christmas vacation. I'm not sure. But anyway, a special thanks to Dino Guy for sending that stuff over. And if you haven't already, go check his channel out. He does a lot of interesting stuff with electronics that's right over my head, but interesting nonetheless. And he also does some really interesting machine work. He's working on a mystery project that I'm still scratching my head what it's all about. So anyway, thanks Mike for sending that stuff over. And anyway, that's a wrap for today. So we'll hope to see you guys all again soon.